Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, this isn't just a book. It's a profound psychological investigation, and it was conducted under the most extreme conditions you can possibly imagine. So together, we're going to dive deep into this masterwork to really understand how the human spirit can find a reason to live even when faced with just unimaginable suffering.
Right from the very beginning, Frankl makes something crystal clear. He's not here to just give us another account of the horrors of the Holocaust. That was already being documented. No, instead, he's taking us on a journey inside the human mind to answer one huge central question about what life was truly like in a concentration camp.
And this is what makes his perspective so incredibly unique. See, Frankl wasn't just another victim. He was a trained psychiatrist from the University of Vienna. So he entered Auschwitz with a professional's eye, observing himself and the people around him with this kind of scientific detachment, just trying to make sense of the psychological reactions to this horrific new reality.
But, that professional identity, it was stripped away almost instantly. His name, his past, his life's work, all of it, just gone. He became prisoner 1119-104. And this wasn't just some administrative detail. It was the very first step in a systematic process of dehumanization, of turning a person into nothing more than a number.
And this is the core question Frankl wanted to answer. He wasn't interested in the stories of heroes or martyrs, but in the experience of the average person. What actually happens to the human soul when you subject it to constant, unending torment? Through his observations, he saw that prisoners went through three pretty distinct psychological phases. So the first phase, it begins the second a prisoner stepped off that train, and it was just pure shock. It was way more than just fear. It was the mind's initial, stunned inability to even process a world that defied all logic, all comprehension. And inside this state of shock, Frankl noticed this strange, almost universal optimism he called the delusion of reprieve. It's wild. New prisoners would see the guards and desperately cling to the hope that, maybe things wouldn't be so bad. It was this powerful psychological defense against a reality that was just too monstrous to accept all at once. Of course, that delusion was shattered pretty quickly by this brutal process of erasure. Everything was taken. Frankl even tried to save his life's work, a scientific manuscript, and a seasoned prisoner just screams one word at him: shit. In that exact moment, Frankl got it. He had to consciously, completely strike out his entire former life just to survive the present moment. This quote from Dostoevsky, it just perfectly captures what Frankl was seeing. Prisoners were constantly amazed by their own resilience. They found out they could sleep 9 men to a wooden plank, survive on scraps of bread and watery soup, and somehow endure freezing temperatures. It turns out humans really can get used to anything. But the process of that adaptation, it was absolutely brutal. But then, after a few days, that initial shock started to fade, and it gave way to something else entirely. As a prisoner got more and more entrenched in the camp routine, a kind of emotional death set in. This was the second phase, apathy. Now, this is so important. Frankl didn't see this apathy as some kind of moral failing, not at all. He saw it as a necessary survival tool, a protective shell the mind built to shield itself from the constant horror. After weeks of seeing death and suffering every single day, a prisoner simply could not afford to feel anymore. The beatings were constant, but Frankl realized the worst pain wasn't actually physical. It was the mental agony of the insult, the sheer unreasonableness of it all. Being beaten for no reason at all, that was a deeper wound than the blow itself, because it was a direct attack on your dignity, on your humanity.
And this apathy led to what Frankl called a regression to a more primitive form of mental life. Basically, the mind became obsessed with the most basic needs. Conversations weren't about philosophy or art anymore. They were about food, all the time. Prisoners would dream of bread and cake and warm baths, only to wake up to the horrific contrast of reality.
And this, right here, brilliantly illustrates Frankl's psychiatric insight. To an outsider, a prisoner's lack of emotion might seem, monstrous. But Frankl argues it was the only sane response possible. Think about it. In a situation that is completely abnormal, a normal reaction is, by definition, going to look abnormal. But then, for something incredible happened. Right there, in the middle of all the apathy and despair, a profound inner pivot became possible. And this, right here, is the very heart of Frankl's discovery. It's the shift from merely surviving to finding a reason why.
So this forces us to confront the ultimate question, right? When every single external part of your identity is gone, what remains? What is the one thing that nobody can ever take away from you? And here is the answer. This is Frankl's most powerful insight. They could control his body, his environment, even his fate, but they could not control his response. That freedom to choose your own attitude, to find your own meaning in suffering, that was the one thing that remained absolutely 100% yours. And from that one inner freedom, Frankl realized that a rich spiritual life was still possible, even in a concentration camp. A person could find meaning by focusing on one of three pillars: love for another person, having a purpose or a goal, and appreciating art and nature. So first, love. Frankl would be marching to a frozen work site, and he'd have these vivid mental conversations with his wife. He had no idea if she was even still alive, but he realized that love, it just transcends the physical. Thinking about his beloved gave him these moments of pure bliss in a state of just utter desolation. Second, purpose. Having a goal that's oriented towards the future was a powerful anchor. Frankl found his by secretly reconstructing his lost manuscript in his head, scribbling notes on tiny scraps of paper. This gave him a reason to survive. He had a task to complete that was bigger than his suffering. And finally, beauty. It's amazing. Frankl describes how prisoners would be moved to tears by the sight of a sunset over the Bavarian mountains, seen through the bars of a cattle car. These little moments of beauty, whether in art or nature, offered this profound spiritual escape and a reminder that a world beyond the barbed wire still existed.
Okay, so what does this all mean for us living in a world so far removed from that horror? Well, Frankl's experiences in the camp led him to a universal conclusion about the very nature of what drives us as human beings. And this is the central idea of logotherapy, the school of psychotherapy Frankl founded after the war. He argued that our primary motivation in life isn't pleasure, like Freud believed, or power, like Adler thought. No, it's our will to meaning, our deep, innate desire for our lives to have a purpose. This, right here, is the ultimate takeaway. Frankl's profound discovery was that suffering itself isn't the real problem. The true problem is suffering without meaning. The moment you find a why for your existence, you can bear almost any how. Meaning is what transforms despair into resilience and hopelessness into actual hope. So, in the end, Frankl believed that life isn't something we question. It is something that questions us every single day. It's always asking us, what are you going to do? How are you going to live? What meaning are you going to create? So the final question, well, it isn't for Frankl. It's for you. What answer are you giving?